Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video will contain my thoughts and impressions on Chapter 16 of the main campaign, New Bonds. This will contain full story spoilers for everything that's happened in the main campaign up to this point, so if you don't want to be spoiled on anything, this is your chance to walk away. I'll start off with some high-level impressions on the chapter. This was definitely a slower chapter. It's more of a setup chapter trying to build up the events that are to come. Personally, I was more excited by last chapter, and I think that's fully intentional. Last chapter was more of a climax with the introduction and assembly of so many of the Agito, finding out about Yuden's origins, but this chapter was a slow burn for me. So probably not my favorite by any means, but nevertheless it had some exciting moments that I think left players with things to love here. So I want to focus on the positive, and I'll talk about some of my criticisms as well as we go along. But to kind of recap what's happened so far with the scene that I'm playing, the chapter begins with rumors swirling about the common folk. Their situation has worsened after the conflict at Sol Alberia. They're dealing with bandits, they're dealing with a lack of supplies for their people. They also have void dragons attacking people and making their lives difficult, causing natural disasters. And rumors begin to swirl among them that the prince has been possessed by the other, and perhaps that's the cause of all of their misfortune. Our party gets wind of these rumors through none other than Ziela, who confronts Elisan alone, tells her about what's going on, and Elisan then relays the information to the group. Obviously everybody's in disbelief, they know it's not true. They were on their way to Valkahim, in fact, to talk to Leonidas and find out about Yuden's true origins. But instead of continuing on to Valkahim, they're then intercepted by a group of soldiers from the Halidom from New Alberia, and they decide that they have to return because the soldiers tell them the Halidom is under attack by the common folk. We get to the Halidom, we find the common folk, but Yuden is not able to confront them directly because obviously they're his own people. So he tries to enter through the back entrance of the Halidom, and there he's intercepted by the Agito twins, Ayaha and Totoha. They do battle, and after that we pick up on this scene where we defeat them and they decide to go ahead and flee. They're not entertained anymore. And Yuden even tries to sacrifice himself or gets in the way of a blow to defend a commoner, but they still see him as the other. So who shows up to save the day when everybody thinks that Yuden is possessed by the other, but none other than everybody's favorite Tommy gun toting prince, Leonidas. So Leonidas shows up, he's looking devilishly good, fires his Manicaster in the air, and basically gives this really well-written or well-spoken speech about the duties of nobility. He sounds very kingly in his presence. It feels like he's developed a lot from his days in Valkahim and as more of a warlord type ruler who valued only strength. It feels like he's genuinely learned a lesson from what happened with his conflict with Yuden a few chapters back. And he shows up and says that he's going to handle the governance of the people. He's going to handle the provisions, the infrastructure, their day-to-day issues. He's going to make sure that the nobility, in this case the Alberian royal bloodline, keeps charge of the people's needs, and that frees up Yuden to handle the other two things that are going on. One of them being the rumors circulating about him, and the other being basically the void dragon that we know is causing havoc for these villagers. So let's skip ahead to see the exciting part of this chapter, one of the cutscenes. He can't hurt them. They're all coming toward him. And there we have it. Leonidas, looking so handsome. I really do love his new look. They completely changed this character for me. Yeah, he looks great there. So then he shows up, he gives his whole spiel that I talked about. The villagers are very impressed, very awestruck by Leonidas. They're like, dude, you're so handsome. We're going to totally follow you. So they follow him. They decide they're going to go along with it. And the story splits into two branches. The EX chapter just essentially explains that a few days prior, Ziela was in the area. She's privy about these rumors. She wants to tell Elisan in part because Ziela really cares a lot about the truth versus lies and versus fiction, deception. So for her, the rumors are not necessarily a positive thing. She is not really she operates by her own principles, similar to Volk, which I thought was kind of interesting. They actually expounded upon that a little bit, to where she would rather dispel this rumor, or at least make clear the truth to the people, or at least it was entertaining to her, or like, the fact that people are so willingly ready to cling to a rumor just because it fits their own worldview. That's very much what she thinks about the Ilian Church, right? They're willing to cling to these falsehoods because it helps them basically kind of confirm their own view, or just live their lives ignorant to what's actually happening. And so for her, it kind of makes sense that she would want to tell this to everybody about the rumor, and also as a way of challenging Elisand because of their own personal interaction in history. But along the way, she has this conversation with Ayaha and Otoha, who have been following her, and tells them that if they want to seek some entertainment, they should head toward the Halidam. So that's why Ayaha and Otoha were waiting there to kind of spring a trap on us. Otherwise, this question mark chapter was just more of a speed run type chapter, or a gauntlet where you run through a lot of traps, a lot of enemies, and have to beat it within the time limit. No more cube fights. I think we've had our fill of those, so I didn't mind the fact that we didn't have yet another one. And the other chapter took us on a path to find the Void Dragon. So Elisand decides to investigate the rumors, and everybody else is going to try to deal with the Void Dragon. And, we'll talk about it as I play this, because I think this chapter has the next pretty interesting scene. But essentially, Elisand comes to find out, sort of as she suspected, that the rumors are partially being propagated by the Ilian Church. And unfortunately for her, it's actually Father Marco, who, although he kind of looks like a generic character, is apparently a known character who's appeared in some of Elisand and Alex's stories, I believe. I'm not too well read up on that. Honestly, I feel like the Southern Church, in terms of the Ilian faith, could use a few more really high-profile characters compared to the more generic priest types. Like, if you think about the Northern Church, we have Sandalphon, we have Ramiel right now, we know of Basilius, we have Pinon, we have Nevin. I feel like they're all much more iconic, they stand out a lot more. This Father Marco guy, he looks like all of the other priest characters in his portrait. So to me, I would have never thought of him as like a relevant character at all, but apparently he is a relevant character in the backstory. And yes, you could say that for the South, we do have certain named characters like Hildegard, Tobias, we have Julieta, but within the hierarchy, like the priesthood, the clergy, we don't really have that many specific characters. So essentially, they bring Father Marco to justice. Leonidas makes his return, so gallant. Looking so good. He comes back, he talks about how they're going to administer justice, and Elisand makes an important decision. She decides she's going to take him to the church to see justice, but in so doing, she's also going to go to renounce her title as a Grand Paladin, because she's felt torn in her allegiance between Yuden and the faith, and she decides that ultimately she is loyal to Yuden, and she can't necessarily juggle and balance both. I thought this was a pretty interesting moment for Elisand. I still feel like her self-doubt is a little bit misplaced. Even at the beginning of the chapter, when she hears the rumors from Ziela, she feels obligated to go tell Yuden and tell the party because she doesn't want to fail him again. I feel like Yuden is not the type to feel as though she owes him something or that he failed her. I think that she kind of misunderstands Yuden if she thinks that, or if she's so concerned with her failings to him. I think he kind of gets the fact that she could want to be a paladin as well as serve him, so I don't know, I've always felt Elisand's struggle to be a little bit unusual. Like, it's gone on for quite a while now. Maybe it's because I'm not the biggest Elisand lore person. I don't really know a lot about her backstory and why she wants to do all these things with the Ilian faith, but especially after having seen Forgotten Truths and read through that, I have to kind of question everything going on with the Ilian Church in the modern day. It does feel like a pretty corrupt mechanism, and it just makes me wonder, like, maybe Elisand is better off not participating in it. We're about to find out some interesting things about the Ilian Church headed north toward the city of Grams. That seems to be where the chapter leaves us going next, so I'll talk about that in just a second. But this scene really struck me as silly. This scene with the Void Dragon, we're about to get to it, but of course, a water void dragon roaming around causing problems. Of course, it's gotta be Void Poseidon. And I just felt at this point that I was being pranked. Like, if y'all watched my summoning video earlier this month when I went for Gala Cerise, or I guess late last month, like, I got so many Poseidon. And then I got a Poseidon off my free dragon voucher. I literally have 200 Poseidon Draconic Essences, which I'll show you. I just have been engulfed by Poseidons, and I can't believe they made Poseidon the big bad void dragon of the story. I just feel like Poseidon is kind of a joke. I can't take Poseidon very seriously because it is a pretty bad dragon in terms of the aura. You could say like the same about the Great Worms, I guess, but Poseidon for me has just like always been this kind of like trivial dragon. And so to see Poseidon show up as the big bad, it really rang hollow for me. Unfortunately, I just could think about all the Poseidon dupes I was getting. The silliest thing is they do their prayer. It is a beautiful scene of Elasan, right, to cleanse Poseidon, and then all of a sudden, Poseidon comes out of the black man and he's got the glow up. Like, he looks totally different. He looks super majestic, and I'm like, I want to summon for that Poseidon. That Poseidon looks great. So I honestly feel like this was kind of shoehorned in. Like, this, to me, is to sell the next Gala Dragon. Like, that is why this is in this part of the story. Sure, it's kind of a character development moment for Elasan. We learn that she still has some prayer powers, even though she's renounced the Ilian Church, which is kind of interesting. And she resonates with Xena and her powers, so that's kind of cool. But, like, I just don't think this needed to be here. Like, I do think this is more about selling Gala Poseidon. They came to the realization that there's no obvious candidate for the next Gala Dragon we'll probably get at the end of this month. And then they were like, yeah, who can we throw in there? I guess we'll start doing the Void Dragons. So it feels like sometimes a lot of what happens in the story is an afterthought, and I think that is one of my overall criticisms of this chapter and the story as of late in general. One of the problems I have with how things have been panning out is we have access to the Great Worms. Where are the Great Worms in the story? Mim is never really saying anything relevant. The other Great Worms have centuries of knowledge at their disposal. Remember, we know that Jupiter is at least 300 years old. He's more than 300 years old in all likelihood because he would have been around before the time of Alberius, because remember, Jupiter was associated with Dane the Emperor. So if Jupiter was around in Dane's time and Dane was between the First and Second Wars of Binding, then Jupiter is extremely old. We know that Midgard Zero and Mine passed on from this Earth sometime between the First War of Binding and the Second, and it wasn't until their passing that eventually Elysium reincarnated Midgard Zero into regular Midgard. But obviously Dane, if Jupiter is over 300 years old, he's seen some things. Like, Jupiter knows a lot of things. Midgard Stormer probably knows a lot of things. Zodiark has this weird connection with Aurelius, probably knows a really lot of things. Like, it's kind of weird to me that all of these dragons that have probably some fundamental knowledge about the nature of Alberia or reality, they really have nothing to say on the matter. And maybe their aloofness is part of their dragonhood, like they don't want to deal with the matters of humans too directly. But if you're going to really form a bond with these dragons, you got to be a friend, you got to be a bud to the dragons. I feel like that's what it's all about. But it just felt very random to me that, like, all of a sudden Poseidon's like an S-tier dragon that gets this special treatment. Like, what is going on with Mercury? What's she doing right now? What is going on with all of our main crew of dragons? What are they up to? And yeah, that's kind of my overall critique of things in the story right now. I feel like they have a lot more influence. They have a lot of things they could be saying and sharing with us. We then get this confrontation with Ziela. I'll skip through this portion. We battle Ziela in her transformed and non-transformed state, so it's basically the two-part battle. I do like that they put these into the story. This is one of the highlights for me because some of the other enemies in the story are kind of generic, like the Mastermind enemy, which was just a generic Imperial soldier. But getting to fight the Agito is kind of cool. It seems like there's a pattern where basically they're going to make us fight the regular form of the Agito boss, and then the next chapter we'll fight the transformed form with the Feral Shroud. Because last chapter we fought the regular form of Ziela, and now we fought the transformed form as well, and this chapter we fought the twins, so I think next chapter we'll probably fight the transformed twins. Volk didn't follow that same pattern because we fought both of Volk's forms in one chapter. But anyway, we defeat Ziela, and instead of just Leonidas taking her out, he's like, I want you to send a message, which feels very unlike Leonidas. Like, he just took Father Marco prisoner and told Elasan how you shouldn't give him back to the church because they're going to show too much mercy. We're going to judge him in Valkahim. And then he's like, Ziela, you're one of the most dangerous and threatening enemies in the known world, but we're gonna let you go. You gotta send Nedrick a message, which, I appreciate that he's so confident he can beat Nedrick, but it feels like he had a pretty prime opportunity right there to just take out Ziela if he wanted to. Ziela also seems like to have some unresolved history and conflict with Elisando, so from that perspective, I see why she was just let go. Anyway, continuing on, this is the big surprise. We find out our free welfare character is none other than Shell. And Shell is actually a shadow bow, super fun to play. I've enjoyed testing her out so far. I think she's a great addition to the cast, but we were all confident that it was going to be a mana caster because we didn't yet have a free mana caster, and it seemed like it would probably be Leonidas as a mana caster. But yeah, Shell totally caught me by surprise. When we get the final departure of everybody on the Grand Fjord toward northern Alberia, it does make sense, or northern Grastia, it makes sense. It's a really cool scene. I love that Shell is part of our cast now. Again, one of these characters who has a lot of knowledge, could answer a lot of the same questions as some of these Great Worms, but based on what Leonidas shares, there are some things that are even unknown to the older royal siblings. So Leonidas doesn't really know the nature of Yudin or his birth. He shares that he knows that there was a deal between the fairy king Finlorda and Aurelius, and his old friend, Aurelius's old friend Gatov in the city of Grams, knows more and wants Yudin to come there to visit him to find out more. So that's where we're headed by the end of this chapter, along with Shell in tow. And reading Shell's adventure story, we know that Aurelius's father invaded or battled with Grams. There was a conflict on the border between Alberia and Grams. So there's some interesting history there. Besides that, we know that Grams is sort of the seat of the northern branch of the church. We're familiar with it from Nevin, Pinon, and the Agents of the Goddess event, the facility event. But yeah, there's a lot unknown here, and we don't know a lot about fairies in the modern day, what they're like, what they're about. It says, Not says that she's really never been there, so yeah. I don't really know if Yudin is a fairy, an otherworld being, if he's the reincarnation of Mordecai, if he's the child of Ilya and Mordecai. He obviously has some way to awaken Elysium within him, and his ideals seem so in contrast with the Elysium we came to know in Forgotten Truths, that I would have to think that Yudin will eventually have to confront the Elysium within him, and his ideals will have to clash with Elysium's. And maybe that will be when he really forges a bond with Elysium for true and can actually access him whenever he wishes. It's interesting, we know Elysium is out there in the world because in Mars's Dragon story, Mars seeks him out. And that happens after the Second War of Binding. So yeah, I just don't really know what's going on with the dragons right now. That's probably my biggest question, is like, why are these dragons not doing something about what's going on? My other gripe with the chapter was they did my man Valix so dirty. Valix just left for dead. Leonidas is like, I gotta save my bro Yudin. I gotta save him and give, proper burials to all these people. I've gotta give them provisions. Valix in the mountains just left for dead. I don't think he's really dead because we haven't seen the body, but why does nobody care that you left Valix on the battlefield after teleporting everybody back to safety except for him? Like, it makes me kind of upset that this character has been totally forgotten and just thrown to the wayside. Similar to Baron, like, nobody's concerned about the threat of Baron right now, or at least expressly concerned. Maybe in a way they are, out of concern of the Void Dragon, but there's a lot happening in the story that I feel like just never really gets addressed. Yeah, I think that's probably my biggest piece of feedback for the story as a whole. I just want more of it. I feel like there's never enough time for the full exposition of all the things that we need and want to know about, so it unfolds so slowly between the 2 months between every chapter and the 1 month with the interludes that, I just wish there were more of it to consume and enjoy. But I think that's pretty much all I have to say about Chapter 16, New Bonds. So definitely let me know what you thought about this chapter in the comments below. I am very curious to hear your take on things and where you see the story headed next. Thank you as always for watching, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you next time.